Welcome to Don't Be a Meathead. Mark Thomas here with Dr. Alan Manison there at the bottom of your screen. That's him with the barbell just above his head. And I can show you, Alan's been working on my shoulder, a lot of stuff going on in there. But while I was in there this week, Alan was particularly perturbed by some recent happenings in the youth soccer world, one that involved his daughter. And we kind of went back and forth on that. And I tried to play a little bit of devil's advocate just to give him some realistic reasons why maybe those youth soccer refs aren't like the FIFA referees that we see either in the World Cup or in Champions League. Alan wasn't hearing it. So he not only told me about his daughter's injury, he told me about his friend and his daughter's injury, who maybe even worse, right? And he said, wait till you talk to him. So here we are. We are talking to Alan's friend with Alan, and we're going to hear all about some refereeing in youth sports, specifically in the youth soccer world. So, Alan, I know about this, but why don't you share with the good people out there what exactly got you ticked off?
There are actually two things, and I think in youth soccer, I'm a U.S. soccer level C coach, so kind of like midway up the food chain there. You'll see high school coaches as level Cs or even college coaches. And I had a good amount of experience as an assistant coach for several years under a tremendous mentor. As a coach, so I've learned a lot. I've seen a lot. I've learned from the coach I was working under, and there's some things we have to remember here. It's that, we're always told as parents or as coaches, respect the refs. There aren't that many of them. Be kind to them, all that great stuff. That's not a problem. And what I'll say, and then when we do the blog with this, that goes along with this video, it's going to be something to the effect of, it's not just bad calls. I was going to originally make it's not bad calls, but it's not just about bad calls. It's also how referees are enabling children to get hurt on the field. And that's like, ooh, be careful. That could be really controversial. Well, good. It should be. Because when you have people out there that are controlling what's going on the field with your children, and there's no amount of accountability, that is really dangerous. So, for example, if you have a school bus driver and they're fine one day, that's great. If they come to work drunk or whatever, guess what? You have accountability, they have accountability, and you can go after them, probably get their job. School teachers, doctors, people that you work with, anyone who's dealing with your kids, if there's a problem or a safety issue as a parent, you always have the ability to have some form of action that you can take to rectify the situation. Well, enter the referee. The referee's on the field. You can't talk to them anymore. You can't yell at them. You can't do anything. And they basically have control of your kids. So if they're allowing for very poor play, and I'm not referring to just a bad call here and there. That's not an issue, although that's bad too. We can discuss that as well. But I'm talking about just pure endangerment of the children. And we're seeing it more and more. And it's not that they don't know how to ref. It's almost like a callous kind of like approach to it, where a lot of them, not all, a lot of them just don't seem to care. Well, most parents will let it go or just yell at the ref or whatever. But if it's your child who has something broken or damaged or significant brain injury, you're going to start feeling a little bit differently. And so the whole point of this is to bring to light the fact that referees should not be getting a free pass. That's just the bottom line. And if they're
Alan,
allowing
what
kids to
happened?
go ahead.
What happened? What happened with your daughter?
What's amazing is that the other gentleman on the call, just for anonymity, we'll keep his name, quiet. But my daughter, was playing in a game last year, and his daughter was a year older and is a year older, and called me. She was playing an hour earlier, and he called me up and he goes, "Oh, you better be careful. The ref, is really allowing for really physical play, dangerous play." And I'm like, whatever, I'm thinking to myself, okay, he's maybe a little nervous about it or a little, whatever. And I got there and guess what? My daughter had fallen and a player, basically tumbled, and there's a lot of shoving and grabbing, and her arm was snapped in half. And I was like, wow. And when I spoke to my buddy here, he's like, I told you that ref was really allowing for a lot of dangerous play. He wasn't making calls. The girls were shoving, they're falling on the ground, they're kicking each other, they're tripping, and nothing's being called. And it was really dangerous. Well, in this case, it was my child. And I wasn't there, so I couldn't see what was happening with that game. I think I was there with one of my other kids. My wife was there. Then she had to rush her to the hospital, and she had to get surgery on her arm and whatnot. It was really bad. And, I've seen things on the field when I was coaching also that I would question, but I was always told, don't get involved with the refs. They're not enough of them. They're doing the best they can. And I'm just at a point now, I'm like, too bad. And we're going to hear more about that in a second. My feeling is they don't deserve any protection if they're allowing for kids to get hurt. If you make a bad call, you miss a handball, you miss an offsides, whatever, that's not what I'm referring to. I'm referring to calls that are made in this case that allow for child endangerment. And I'm also going to touch a little bit on when this other gentleman here talks about referees that actually determine the course of a game by not knowing the rules. So it's a bigger problem that we give credit for. But it's time that we speak up. And as a coach, if a coach is afraid to advocate for players, like, if I say anything to this ref, it's really whatever, my players are getting hurt, he's just going to give me a red card and boot me out. Then you know what? Another avenue to pursue is every one of these high school games and every one of these club games needs to have an athletic trainer, a licensed athletic trainer at these events. And I know a lot of clubs will say, that's expensive. Well, what's more expensive than getting a potential lawsuit because your child gets injured and a parent's angry because you're not providing proper supervision if someone gets injured? So I think there's a liability on the clubs if they don't have someone there medically. And even if you have an emergency plan to call 911, that could take 7 minutes, 10 minutes, 12 minutes for some injuries, especially head injuries, that could be life or death. So it's very important, I think, for every high school game and every higher level club game. And we could say, look, every sports game should have an athletic trainer. I know the restrictions. I know it's difficult to do with money, but certainly there's got to be a much greater effort for this to take place to ensure the safety, or at least help ensure the safety of our youth.
So your daughter got her arm broke.
Snapped in half, yeah.
Let's hear from your friend. What happened to his daughter?
So my daughter was in a soccer game that was very controversial with both sides, the home and visitor side, both saying that the referees were literally letting the game get out of control. In that game, in overtime, after my daughter had been pushed down several times, tackled like a football player, she was finally basically tackled like a targeting foul in football, where she ended up breaking her nose and getting a concussion. Now, I've been involved in youth sports a long time. Youth soccer coach, brought my both girls up through youth soccer, played on select teams, played on some of the highest level teams in the state, been to many different states and tournaments across the country, have played at all kinds of different levels, and never in my life have I ever complained about a ref. It's not about a bad call. This was literally an unsafe experience by both sides' points of view. And the question that came out of this was, how do you describe how unsafe the situation is? And, Alan used the bus driver example earlier, talking about, if it's a bus driver and the bus driver shows up to work drunk, there's accountability. You can have him arrested, you can have him fired, you can have something done, right? But that bus driver is in charge of your kids. So right now on a soccer field, you might ask as a parent, well, who's in charge of my kids? Is it the coach? Is it me? Or is it the referee? And as Alan brought up, there's not much the coach can do, because the coach gets red carded and ejected. In just about every sport, not just in soccer, but every sport allows for the coach to be ejected. The coaches can be removed. So who advocates for your children on the soccer field when a coach is afraid of getting ejected? So he or she doesn't speak up and doesn't take the course of action to protect their players. Short of pulling everyone off the field and leaving the game, how do you overcome a referee that is so bad, even by their organization's own admission, which I contacted the organization, and the director of the organization admitted that 20 fouls in the second half of a high school game and 6 yellow cards in the second half of a high school game is a little excessive. Now, for those of you who don't know, there's 40 minutes in a high school game. That's a foul every 2 minutes, along with 6 yellow cards on both teams, both ways. The fact that it got that way in the second half, that's only the second half fouls we're talking about, not even what happened in the first half. And then in overtime, my daughter gets an injury that is potentially life-altering. So another good example while I'm talking about this here is the safety of our children. There was an incident in the county where we live recently where someone was found with a gun in school. Outrage. People went nuts, and rightfully so. However, my take is, what about the multiple injuries being experienced each week because of lack of control in the games? Okay, lack of control where the referee lets it get out of control and people end up with a broken arm, which is a permanent lifetime altering injury like Alan's daughter, or a broken nose, or a concussion, or some other life altering injury because of high school referees who don't know what they're doing and let it get out of control. The worst part about it is there's no way to hold them accountable. There's no way to complain.
I mean,
It was
we
a
have
hard-fought
the
game.
video from the incident with this gentleman's daughter. When we look at this video, and I'll post it here and we go through it, we'll see that as the tackle's taking place, dribbling, this isn't like a normal soccer tackle where the player's going for the ball. If you can see it in the video as we're running it, there's basically an elbow that comes up and basically hits her in the head. Like it was basically, a takedown.
Yeah, that's bad. That's
And
really
been
bad.
targeting
That's a red
foul.
this is not the way
Football.
soccer's played at all. That player should be immediately ejected out of the game with an elbow to the head.
I know
Especially
you
when you have a
can't,
broken nose and a serious concussion afterward. It's not just a soccer tackle going for the ball.
Yeah.
and I know
There's
it
no
wouldn't
way.
have taken away the broken nose, but was she red carded for that play?
No, and it's not even about the red card. It's the fact that it was in overtime, and there's several other incidents, including the six yellow cards in the second half. There wasn't one red card issued the whole game, which would have made a difference.
Let me ask you this: why do you think that there's resistance to giving out red cards? I know that you've been writing to athletic directors and trying to contact referee associations, whatnot. What is your take? Like, why do you feel like there aren't any red cards given?
Yeah, so the organization who hires these referees for the county claims that these were 3 of their best referees who let this game get this out of control.
Doesn't say
With
so.
literally women on the field beating each other up. Now, what I found out in researching the organization is that if they issue a red card, the referees have to fill out a report. The report has to get sent to both athletic directors, and it becomes a bigger issue. They can issue yellow cards all day. And then, the complaints, again, getting back to the complaints where there is a serious issue. And this is both sides complaining. This wasn't just me because my daughter got hurt. There were other children here who are on scholarship already, playing for high school teams, going D1 on this team. And they were potentially in a situation where if they got injured, they would lose their scholarship over a referee who let a game get out of control. Now think about that. I mean, that's further than just a soccer game and a bad referee. And we're not talking about a bad call again. It's not about the ball being over the line or an offsides call or something like that. This is literally dangerous play. And the most challenging part about this whole situation is trying to have something documented to hold them accountable, to have them retrained, to have them notified that they maybe made a mistake in this game and they need some retraining here. There's no way to do it.
So it seems like, a red card is a lot of work, right? So that may be part of the reason why they're hesitant to give one. And it just becomes a lot more complicated. But it sounds like from that game, something needed to be done earlier in the game to get things under control.
Yeah.
Was there any point where the referee stopped play and talked to both teams or went to either coach and told them they got to get this under control?
So that's really good questions, because under the normal standards as a referee, you watch the escalation of these things throughout a game. And as the escalation occurs, you go through certain steps to mediate that game and to mediate the penalties and to mediate the teams, and you issue warnings, yellow cards or verbal warnings. Those were all issued several and many times. There was a parent who was actually ended up being a teacher, ejected from the game from the other side. The coach on the other side actually did get a yellow card at one point. So there were measures taken, but again, never the measure that really would settle things down being a red card.
So if the coach got a yellow card, in a way, his girls were somewhat imitating his behavior.
Undoubtedly, another good blog, another good point. Yeah, and that's something that should be discussed at some point.
What did the
Where
coach get the
where you're
yellow
trying
card
to
for?
do
Was it
this.
arguing or was it for?
Dissent or disrespect.
It was
Yeah,
arguing in disrespect. Yeah, at one point there was a player down on the field, and he was screaming, "Why is she down so long? Let's get her off the field so we can play."
that's bad. Yeah,
Yeah, but again,
it goes back to one of the coaching topics.
but here's I want to get back to this for a second because this is really important. So, our coach had been yellow carded weeks before. So our coach now, seeing this happen on the field during the game as it's happening, afraid of getting carded, fails to speak up and defend his own girls, watching them get brutalized throughout the game. Again, it goes back to who's in control, who is responsible for the students, the student athletes at a game like this. It's the referees. It all boils down to the referees. But when the referees are in neglect, how do you hold them accountable? You can't. There's no way to do it. Look it up in the state of Maryland. Look up how to hold a referee accountable or file a complaint. It is extremely difficult to find. If you find it, please send me the link.
Yeah, you'd like to think in a perfect world, a coach would recognize when his or her own players have crossed the line with their behavior, but clearly this coach's own behavior had crossed the line. So he's not going to be the guy to rein his own players in.
Yeah.
And I mean, it probably speaks to somewhat the culture of his program.
Yeah.
So if you don't have the referees handling it and you don't have the coaches handling it, who's going to handle it? I mean, and unfortunately,
Who's going to handle it? Yeah, that's right.
It's really the referees. I've been in games coaching where, the coach I'm working under, in this case, was a different coach I was taking on my C course, was unjustly actually red carded. He didn't really do anything wrong. And there was a really bad call, and he said, "Hey, what was it? What was it?" And the ref came over, gave him a red card, and then the fans on the other side were actually, yelling, and I was the assistant, so I had to take over. And I'm standing there, and it's a tournament actually, and I'm kind of talking to the players about moving position and just moving people around while all this chaos is going on. And then the ref comes over to me and says, "If you don't get your fans to be quiet, you're out too." And I was like, "I'm out. I haven't said anything to you." And then the director of the tournament came over and said, "Okay, let's get back to the game. You don't need to threaten this coach." I mean, the refs are a lot of them are like all over the place on stuff. I think some it's an absolute power trip. I think, I mean, they just get that whistle and that card, and they, for coaches especially. But my God, if you want to advocate for a child, there's got to be some type of protection mechanism where you can't be in fear as a coach, getting kicked out, trying to save a kid from getting serious injury. And again, that's where athletic trainers come in. If you have a medical staff there at those games, they can then advocate because the ref can't kick them out. They're there, and they can say, "This is getting too rough." I know that I'm writing up in the blog here. Everyone will see it. Different ways to add to youth sports to assess referees. I think it'd be great if after every game, the coaches got an email and said, "Please assess the ref. Give us your feedback." It's either filled out, they do it by writing or filling in boxes or whatever.
Yeah.
I think they should also track injuries. If you are a referee and you have a concussion a game or a broken limb a game, or someone's carted off and the athletic trainers would be there, or some medical staff, that's going to follow them. So you find some refs, hey, there's really no injury. They're taking anything that's really stressful going on. They're knocking it down really fast. They're really responsible. Those type of referees are great, far and few. They're great, but if you got them, you got to reward them. And the ones that have these injuries after every game and they're getting bad reviews, it's not really good enough to just say, "Well, sorry, we don't have enough refs."
So that's a really good
I'll
point.
I'll let this gentleman talk about that more. But I think like assessments for the refs, I think tracking them, I think having something up. The other thing is, why are their identities hidden? This notion like, oh, parents after a game are going to track them down and hunt them down. That's bogus. I don't see really any parents tracking down coaches or athletes on the field. They're not tracking down pediatricians or bus drivers. They're not tracking down anyone else. Everyone's all of a sudden afraid that, oh, some people are going to track down the referee. So their names have to be hidden. So they have, again, this accountability issue. You can't find out who they are. You can't get their names. You can't file a complaint with their names. They're completely shielded and protected. And guess what? They can be creating a lot of harm. These are the things that really need to change. When you go to a game, you know the team you're playing against, and the coach is going to be listed because the head coaches are listed. They're there. Why are the refs hidden?
Yeah, and you need to know that information to hold accountability and growth of the program too, right? So I mean, are the girls who are involved in these games and see these things happening, do you think they want to play high school sports next year? Do you think the girls who are younger at the games watching this happen want to get involved in high school sports? I mean, do you think that these kids want to be part of a team or a program watching, people break their noses and break their arms and get seriously injured in a game that really shouldn't happen? It doesn't happen so much at the college level or the pro level. You don't see those kind of severe injuries like Alan's daughter had or like other people get. You don't see that regularly. It doesn't happen as much because there is a program in place to hold those referees accountable. There's not at the high school level. And the high school level is very important to develop the future of sports.
Yeah.
I would
And I
say as
think
far
one
as
of the
the club
problems,
level as well.
this is one of the things that I
Yeah.
talked about with Alan when I played a little bit of devil's advocate with him. There's not quite the administrative support staff or infrastructure, for these club or high school referees,
It's
like there would
22
be
hours.
for college referees or professional referees, where you have a whole big organization. This is
Yeah,
very, very skeleton
you'd
crew.
be
So
surprised.
if everybody's filing paperwork after every game, you can imagine the number of games. It's going to be a mound of paperwork that probably one person has to try to go through.
Yeah, well, here's the thing though. So they're all licensed by the Maryland State Referee Association, which charges a fee to get your referee
Yep.
license. And then there's an organization that manages and assigns referees to each high school game. And that, the local high school assigner for certain counties does have a fairly significant organization. And that organization has directors, vice presidents and secretaries and other people who are involved in that organization. Now, if we're paying money for those services, like we pay a bus driver to keep our kids safe and referee a game. How many times have you had to referee something between your kids to keep it safe? We're paying money for this as a county, as a part of the program. We should be able to hold the program accountable. And that's the challenge, is the injuries aren't being tracked. Maybe these 3 referees that were in this particular game were involved in 8 other games this year where people got hurt significantly. If that's the case, that's worse than bringing a gun to school. You're looking at lifetime injuries.
Yeah.
And potential CTE, potential issues with bone growth if you break your growth plate. I mean, there's serious injuries that occur every week in these games with no accountability. More at risk in a game like this than there is driving the bus.
I don't disagree. I will say, my own 2 boys are licensed soccer referees. And when they did the final part of it, the in-person clinic, and they got these certifications at 14 years old. So that's how young they're willing to go, because they're so short of referees. And when they did this final clinic, they told them that they were something like 600 referees short of their target.
My daughters are both referees as well, so I'm with you on that. I've also talked about this with several people where if you're short a referee, don't send me somebody who doesn't know what they're doing. Don't play the game. And when games start getting canceled, we'll find more referees. You watch.
Sometimes they'll let the coaches referee, which isn't a perfect solution, but it might be better than, a guy who's, not going to take it seriously or is just checking a box. They are paid pretty well. I would say
that's another good point. So you bring up another good point. So they get paid regardless of what kind of job they do.
Yeah, on the average, I would say however many minutes long the game is, it's probably about $1 per minute they're being paid.
Yeah, but they show up and they could do nothing or do something and they still get paid.
Yeah, right.
Amazing. I mean, I love that.
Mark, I don't think it's that much per game, and it depends if they're 3 or 1 or the tournament and everything else.
And a ref gets more the side.
Hours are getting paid, decent money for it. But again, as we're all discussing here, accountability. There's got to be some way for each coach to fill in boxes afterward or write something about the refs. There has to be an injury report that would be done by the athletic trainer there that would discuss which players are hurt, how it occurred. If 2 players go up for a head ball and they get injured, that is not a ref's fault. We don't have a problem with that. If they're allowing kids to shove and knock people down and they're getting away with it and they keep doing it more and more, that is the ref's problem. And we see that too
clearly
much.
We
don't really know what's in a lot of these refs' minds. It could be just, on the girls' side especially, they could be just chauvinistic and like, I don't really care. It's girls, and they let it go. And you kind of have that that attitude sometimes. You can see it with the refs, and they're very dismissive, and you can't say anything to them. And it's like a certain amount of I'm in charge, and they're a little, arrogant or, with stuff. And it just needs to be a record of that. And if this occurs too long, guess what? They're no longer reffing anymore. And that's the way it should be in any field, especially if children are getting hurt. I mean,
So I'll say this.
there's really no excuse. There's no argument on the other side. And I'll say, well, we're short on refs. Okay, great. Then if you're short on refs and you can't provide a safe environment, then I'm sorry, the game has to be delayed or changed until there's safety that can be ensured for the children. And again, most parents would probably even disagree with me and say, nah, they got to play the games. This is whatever. And I'm like, okay, if your kid is the one that gets a serious concussion and is out of school for a couple of months and is slurring their speech I've seen this in youth sports. If your child is that child, you certainly change your tone very quickly. And I think it's very easy to build an accountability track for the referees and gives, the ref, you think the referee agency would want to know who's a good ref and who's not a good ref. Well, how are you going to determine that?
Yeah.
You have to have.
So that agency told me there were 3 of his best referees. I want to know how he thinks they're 3 of his best referees.
Like, how do you assess that unless you're just basically protecting everyone, which you go down with the ship if something happens?
They may cover for each other. Did either the head coach or the athletic director pursue it?
So I'm still going through this, trying to get someone to actually pursue it, including the school board, the superintendent, the athletic director, recently the principal of the school, to get someone to pursue it and get something on record about how dangerous this game was by the organization's own admission, where they said 20 fouls and 6 yellow cards was excessive. Not just my opinion. They admitted that it was excessive, okay? Mm-hmm. And yet there's still no response from them on anything that they're willing to do to retrain or reorganize and say, hey, this is what we're going to do to make sure this doesn't happen next year. Right? That's the issue. How do we make it better? And what we're identifying here is some type of a major void in referee accountability, learning, safety. I mean, other issues. There's a lot of conversation starting here. And maybe there's an independent website that needs to be started to rate referees in games. But again, like Alan pointed out earlier, finding out who they are is not easy.
Yeah, it's true.
It's the same thing in college sports and pro sports, except it's a little more widely known because you know their names, you know who they are, and there's probably, if I had to guess, better systems in place to make them better referees or get rid of the not so good referees. At the high school level, there's not.
There's a chance you're going to see this referee again.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure. But so here's the thing though. So we're talking about one sport here. My daughter's played multiple sports. I've never had a complaint about a referee. Never. This is the first time. And my daughter's been hurt before. Seriously hurt with concussions and other issues. I didn't complain about anything because it wasn't the referee's fault. Another one of my daughters just got 7 stitches last week from an accident in a different type of sport. No complaint about the referee. It was a flagrant foul in the game, and she got hurt and she ended up getting stitches. But again, I'm not writing that organization. I'm not, and this is where I think as a parent and as someone who looks at high school sports as being something that is needed in our society, you have to make them safe for the kids, or you're not going to have high school sports. We already can't field full teams. We right. can't field full JV teams or full high school teams. No one wants to do it. And why would they?
Yeah, Alan, you got any more?
No, I look at this and I say there is something very easy to enact to change the way that things are done. People hate change. Oh, goodness gracious. But it helps everyone. It helps the refs who really care about their job to see where they're doing right and wrong. Most people at a job will get a review, or they get, if they want a raise, they sit down with their HR department and they say, look, you're getting a raise because you did this great or whatever. You're not getting a raise because there's got to be some way to track and to do it. We're going to write up 4 or 5 different points. It's going to be, attached with this talk on the blog. I would ask everyone who views this, who reads it, to start making some waves, start getting this going. It's not difficult. It's not accusatory. We're not trying to take down all referees or all that. We're trying to make it so that there's responsibility, accountability, and most importantly, as we do with most everything with Don't Be Meathead, it's not just it's with athletes and training and stuff. It's also safety for the kids is very, very important, and that's what we're trying to ensure here. And if there's a way to make it better, let's make it better. If it's a little bit of work for the organizations, great. It saves them legal headache if someone really has a kid dies or something, and it's videotaped, and the ref is, you're not going to escape it these days. Everything's on video, everything can be seen. You're not going to be able to run. You're not going to be able to hide and protect people like you could maybe a decade or two ago, whatever. Everything's recorded now. So it's great to have something that protects everyone involved. It's a win-win for everyone.
Yeah, when you see this video of the blow to the head, that's pretty bad. I mean, it looks like targeting, what they would call in football. Like this was not by
It's a
accident.
soccer game.
So yeah,
that's not proper soccer, and the ref should identify that, and there should have been an immediate, ejection. And during the course of the game, if you watch other parts of the game, you just see the whole game was violent. It could have been halted and stopped much earlier with, if any other kids, red cards, or get 2 yellows, you're out, or whatever. I mean, sometimes it's just got to be done. And once that happens, usually that settles everything down very quickly. But in this case,
So
it's basically who's next.
there were several fouls committed by the same person in the game, and actually, as a result of that play, both girls were out for the rest of the season.
Wow, and that player suffered no consequences.
She was out for the season, but yeah, no.
I mean, not the one, but the one that inflicted. She got a yellow card at best, at worst, or nothing.
Yeah, and again, it's having been involved in sports all my life, coaching, playing girls in sports, never had a complaint about a ref. Never even considered evaluating something like this. But there's got to be accountability, and I would tell anyone listening to start with who's paying for the referees. Well, in this case, it's the county school system that pays for the referees. The county school system should demand some type of accountability and reporting on whether or not they're getting good service for the money they're paying. And
if the opposing coach knows how bad your daughter was hurt?
I don't know. It's a good question.
Yeah. Before we wrap this up real quick, how are each of your daughters doing now?
My daughter's still recovering, and she had to have surgery to correct a nose injury. So, it's a life-altering injury. Just the experience of having to go through it is life-altering. And my other daughter who had stitches recently, and she's recovering, but she'll have a permanent scar. So there's bigger issues here to the sports and the lack of appropriate calling. But I didn't even the stitches was not even raised as a referee issue. It was more of an accident.
Right. And Alan, how's the broken arm?
Oh, I mean, she got plate screws. I mean, this was a little while back. It wasn't as recent as this case here. But again, I mean, this nice gentleman here, he called me before the game and said, "Oh my God, the refs are really allowing for unsafe play." And I you don't really think about it, right? And then something happens, then you start thinking about it, and then you hear more and more and more, and you see more and more, and it just hits finally just hit a boiling point, like you said, Mark. So you alluded to, it's like enough, enough. Something needs to be done, so more kids aren't getting hurt. And again, if they are hurt at a game and it's not the ref's fault, at least athletic trainers say they can tend to them, call the ambulance, so it needs to be done. That's something that needs to be addressed. And if there's unsafe play from refs, they need to stop reffing. They need to find other people to do that job. When this is out, there'll be a blog attached to it, as we normally do. I want to ask all parents, if you have video of really unsafe play, or you want us to do like we're, kind of highlighting this incident, I'll do a video on any parent around the country who has video on something that's grossly negligent from, a ref that's creating harm. I think the more that we discuss this, and look, we're not trying to hunt down the refs here. I mean, I'm not trying to be unfair to them. I'm not asking you to send stuff for a while. They missed a call. I'm saying if there's a real safety issue, let us know. We'll highlight it. We'll talk about it. And let's hopefully, through whatever means necessary, let's find a way for accountability and to make it safer on the fields for lacrosse, football, field hockey, soccer, whatever sport it is. Let's do it for the kids. So we're here for everybody. Don'tBeMeathead.com.
Absolutely.
We're on YouTube at Don't Be a Meathead. Find us on X. Find us everywhere. Share us. Tell everyone about us. We're here for the kids. We keep putting out. We're all very busy professionals, so we can't put out new material like every week, although we'd like to. I mentioned maybe we will. if we have time for that. But whatever we put out, we want it to be meaningful and to help you.
Yeah, really quick. My goal for bringing the awareness to the referee organization and the school board and everyone I've been in touch with wasn't to go after the refs. It was to find out how to prevent this from happening again.
I agree. And hope we can make some progress towards that. So thanks to everybody. Really good
Thank you.
discussion. One that could go on and on and on, right? And I hope we make some progress.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much. I
Thank you.
appreciate both of you. Thank you.